The house lights dimmed inside the Las Vegas International Hotel. More than 4,000 fans filled the grand hall, waiting for one man. Guitars shimmered through the speakers, drums began to pulse, and a voice echoed from backstage, the unmistakable drawl of the king himself. "Ladies and gentlemen, Elvis Presley." The crowd erupted. Flashbulbs flared like tiny stars. Elvis stepped into the spotlight wearing a white jumpsuit lined with gold, his smile warm yet a little weary from years of fame. But tonight felt different. There was an energy, something tender in the air he couldn't name yet. He opened with, "Love Me Tender," letting each word flow like honey over the crowd. But halfway through the song, as the melody softened, a faint sound rose above the applause. It wasn't cheering, it was crying, a small, trembling sob. Elvis's eyes searched the crowd, row after row of glowing faces, until he spotted it. A little boy, maybe 6 or 7, sitting on his mother's lap near the front. Tears rolled down his cheeks, shoulders shaking uncontrollably. The band kept playing, but Elvis lifted his hand, just a small gesture, and the music stopped. The room fell into silence so complete that you could hear the child's sob echo off the walls. 4,000 people froze, confused. Elvis stepped forward, microphone lowering from his lips. "Hey, Lil, man," he said softly, that southern gentleness wrapping around the words, "What's the matter, son?" The boy's mother started to apologize, whispering, "I'm so sorry, Mr. Presley. He just misses his dad. His father's," she couldn't finish. Her voice broke. Elvis's face changed. The playful sparkle in his eyes turned to compassion. "He misses his daddy," he repeated quietly. The little boy nodded, wiping his tears with the back of his hand. In that moment, time seemed to hold its breath. Thousands watched as Elvis walked down the stairs from the stage, bodyguards unsure whether to follow. The lights tracked him until he knelt beside the child. "What's your name, buddy?" "Tommy," the boy whispered. "Well, Tommy," Elvis said, "you got a big heart. You remind me of someone I used to be." He looked at the mother. "Ma'am, may I?" She nodded through her tears. Elvis lifted the boy gently into his arms, stood up, and turned to the audience. "This little man here's got more courage than all of us tonight," Elvis said into the mic. The crowd watched in stunned silence. "He's missin' his daddy, and I think we all know what that feels like in some way." The orchestra stood motionless. Elvis looked toward his bandleader and gave a small nod. The guitarist strummed the first chords of "My Boy." But Elvis didn't sing to the microphone. He sang softly to Tommy, rocking him in his arms as if the song belonged only to him. Lines about a father's love, a son's pride, and broken homes filled the hall. Every note trembled with sincerity. People in the audience began to cry quietly, women dabbing their eyes, men looking down so no one could see. When the song ended, Elvis kissed the boy on the forehead and whispered something no microphone caught. Then he handed Tommy back to his mother and said, "Your daddy's proud of you, son. You remember that." The audience erupted, not with the usual wild cheering, but with a wave of emotion that felt sacred. Many said later it was the first time they had ever felt love itself filling a room. The concert resumed, but the energy was different now. Elvis sang, "If I Can Dream," with a power that shook the chandeliers. The child had somehow reminded him why he sang in the first place, not for fame, not for applause, but for connection. Backstage after the show, Elvis sat quietly in his dressing room, towel around his neck, still thinking of the boy. His manager, Colonel Parker, came in. "That was something, kid," he said gruffly. "You stopped a sold-out show for one crying kid." Elvis just smiled faintly. "Colonel, sometimes one heart's worth more than 4,000 tickets." Outside, the boy's mother was waiting. She held Tommy's hand, his eyes still red but shining. When Elvis came out, the child ran to him and hugged his leg. "My daddy's in heaven," he said softly. "You sing like him." Elvis knelt again, eyes glistening. "Then I reckon your daddy's up there tapping his foot right now." The next morning, newspapers couldn't stop talking about it. Elvis stops show for crying child, audience in tears. But for Elvis, it wasn't about headlines. It was about a moment of humanity that broke through the glamour. Weeks later, the boy's mother sent a letter. Inside was a small drawing Tommy had made. Stick figure Elvis holding a microphone, and beside him a tiny boy with a big smile. At the bottom, he'd written, "Thank you for singing to me and Daddy." Elvis framed that letter and kept it in Graceland. To him, it wasn't fan mail, it was a reminder of purpose. When the world saw a superstar, Tommy saw a friend. Years passed. Elvis grew older, his shows fewer, his fame turning heavier than gold. But sometimes, in the middle of a performance, he'd pause, look up, and whisper, "This one's for Tommy." He never forgot. Decades passed. The lights of Las Vegas changed, the music industry evolved, and the world that once screamed for Elvis had grown quiet. But stories, real stories, never die. They live on in hearts, in whispers, and sometimes, in an old reel of forgotten film. It all began when a restoration team at a music archive in Nashville uncovered something extraordinary. Hidden among stacks of vintage reels was an unmarked film canister labeled only with a date, April 13, 1972. They loaded it onto an old projector, and as the film flickered to life, the ghost of a moment long gone returned. There he was, Elvis Presley, standing on stage, wearing his white jumpsuit and golden belt, but not singing. He was kneeling, holding a small boy in his arms. The sound was grainy, but the voice that followed was unmistakable. "Hey, Lil, man, what's the matter, son?" The entire restoration team froze. They had read about this night in fan letters, but most dismissed it as legend. And yet here it was, the lost footage of the night Elvis stopped his concert for a crying child. The video was short, only 7 minutes, but it was enough to melt even the toughest hearts. They uploaded it quietly to a small online archive, never expecting what would happen next. Within 24 hours, millions of views flooded in. Fans across generations wrote comments like, "I can feel his soul in this moment," and, "This is what real humanity looks like." Clips of the footage spread across platforms until they reached the eyes of a team from America's Got Talent. The producers watched, spellbound, as Elvis gently rocked the little boy and sang, "My Boy." It wasn't just a performance, it was a prayer in motion. They knew instantly, this had to be shown to the world again. The night was set. The AGT stage glimmered with blue lights. The judges took their seats. Simon Cowell, Sofia Vergara, Heidi Klum, and Howie Mandel, waiting for a special tribute performance teased by producers as a moment that will bring the world together. The giant screen behind the stage went dark. A hush swept through the theater. Then, grainy black and white film began to play, the long-lost Elvis concert footage. Gasps filled the room as the king appeared, his voice echoing through the speakers like a whisper from heaven. Simon leaned forward, elbows on the table, his usual sharp expression softening instantly. You could see it in his eyes. This wasn't just entertainment, it was reverence. The audience watched as Elvis's voice, warm and trembling with emotion, filled the hall. "This little man here's got more courage than all of us tonight." The screen showed Elvis lifting the crying child and singing to him. You could hear sniffles in the crowd, tissues rustling, even the cameraman blinking back tears. Simon's lips trembled slightly as he whispered to himself, "Unbelievable." When the clip ended, the lights faded to black. But then, on the live AGT stage, a soft spotlight illuminated a young performer, a modern-day Elvis impersonator named Jackson Hale, known for his uncanny voice and kind heart. He wore a simple white suit, not flashy, but respectful, carrying an acoustic guitar. He spoke quietly into the mic. "This performance tonight is not to imitate, but to honor." Elvis once stopped a show for a crying boy who missed his father. "Tonight, I sing for every child who's ever missed someone they loved." Then he strummed the first chords of "If I Can Dream." The crowd went silent again, not out of politeness, but awe. The young man sang with raw feeling, channeling the spirit of Elvis, not copying him, but continuing his message of compassion. Halfway through, old footage appeared behind him, the moment Elvis hugged Tommy, side by side with the live singer under the same kind of light. The emotional layering was powerful. Two eras, one message. The past and present joined in harmony. When the final note faded, the crowd rose as one. A standing ovation that lasted longer than any the show had seen that season. The young performer wiped a tear and looked up as if thanking someone unseen. Simon Cowell stood slowly, eyes glistening. His voice was soft, barely above a whisper, yet filled with conviction. "You know," he said, pausing to steady himself. We see talent every day, but what we just witnessed goes far beyond talent. That was heart. That was humanity. And I think Elvis would be proud. The audience erupted once more, and for the first time in a long while, Simon didn't try to compose himself. He simply let the emotion flow. After the show, backstage cameras caught him still thinking about it. "It's strange," he told a producer. "I've judged thousands of acts, but that one reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place. It's not about perfection, it's about connection." That moment went viral. The clip of Simon Cowell's emotional reaction and the restored footage of Elvis side by side broke every view record the show had seen in years. Over 4,600 audience members were present that night, and every single one of them felt it in their heart. The comment section overflowed with love. "Even Elvis's spirit still heals people. This made me call my dad and tell him I love him. My son and I watched this together, and we both cried." It wasn't just nostalgia. It was legacy, the continuation of a kindness that had begun decades ago with one simple act, a man stopping his concert for a crying child. Weeks later, the young tribute singer, Jackson Hale, received a handwritten letter from someone he'd never met. It was from a man named Thomas Ray, who lived quietly in Tennessee. Inside the envelope was a picture, a black and white photo of a little boy sitting on Elvis Presley's lap. The note read, "Dear Jackson, that little boy in Elvis's arms, that was me. I was Tommy. I never forgot that night. I grew up, became a father, and every time I held my own son, I remembered the way Elvis held me. Your song tonight reminded me of that feeling again. Thank you for keeping his kindness alive. Tommy." When Jackson read the letter, he broke down in tears. The cameras later caught him sharing the story on AGT's backstage interviews, saying, "Sometimes the smallest act of compassion can echo for a lifetime. Elvis stopped a concert for one crying boy, and that moment is still changing lives today." Simon watched the replay on his phone later that evening. The usually unflappable judge sat quietly for a long time, then whispered to himself, "That's what music's supposed to do. That's what it's all about." Years have a way of softening the edges of time, but stories like this never fade. In Graceland, among Elvis's treasures, still sits a small, framed drawing of two stick figures, one big, one small, holding hands. The paper is yellowed now, the ink fading, but the message written by a little boy long ago remains clear. "Thank you for singing to me and Daddy." That thank you traveled through time. From a mother's tears in Las Vegas to a viral clip on modern television, from Elvis's golden microphone to Simon Cowell's tearful applause, all connected by one thread, the power of kindness. Because kindness doesn't age, it doesn't belong to one generation, one stage, or one voice. It's the music that never stops playing. If you've made it this far, thank you for staying with us. Stories like this remind us that true greatness isn't in fame or fortune, it's in the hearts we touch when no one's watching. This has been Heart-Touching Stories, where real emotions meet real people, and where even a single act of love can echo across decades. Until next time, remember, kindness, once shared, never dies.